All right, thank you, Brenda. First, I would like to say thank you for allowing me to speak again with all of you. Everyone here is so responsive to everything that I've said in the past, so I'm so thankful for that. And so thank you for letting me be here again. I'm very grateful for that. But also, I wanted to make sure you can see my screen. I think you can. Everything's good. And we're going to just plow through the information that I've got to share tonight is hopefully going to be very useful for everybody. And as Brenda said, I will be watching the chat as well. So if you have really dire questions that you'd like to ask me, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'll be answering them as they come in. And then we'll take a little bit of time at the very end to answer some questions too. Hopefully I will get all your questions answered. And if for whatever reason you forget something or I miss your question, hopefully not, but I'll have my contact information on the last slide as well, so that you can contact me anytime. We can chat it up about owls. Owls are my very favorite topic to talk about, so I'm very excited to talk about them tonight. All right, let me make sure everything's good on my side. All right. So tonight we're talking all about owls. There are a few things that we're going to run through, somewhat of an agenda. So the first thing, we're going to talk about some very special features that all owls have. We're going to be focusing on Nevada owls. We will be talking about some identification basics because I know all of you are very active, very avid people to be outside, birders, hikers, naturalists. So hopefully we're going to go over some identification basics and that you'll get something out of that. And then we're going to talk about what to look for when searching for these owls, some key characteristics that may stand out that will help them stand out. And then lastly, we will focus on 7 owls that are extremely common in Nevada. Most of them are common in Southern Nevada, but we all travel. So we're going to focus on owls that exist all over Nevada, not just Southern Nevada. During that end species showcase of those 7 species, we're also going to be talking about some of the main field markings with lots of beautiful pictures. We'll mention nesting behavior, hunting behavior, best time to go out birding for that owl, things like that. All right, so first, special features and characteristics. Firstly, owls are wild. They can take care of themselves. I always like to mention this right at the very beginning of all my presentations, simply because owls are fluffy critters, and some of them with their huge eyes, we want to take them, cuddle them, reach out and touch them, but it's just a little reminder for all of us nature lovers that owls are wild, they need to remain wild, and because they're wild animals, they are very unpredictable. So we just need to respect their space, and hopefully they will respect ours as well. Most owls are nocturnal. I do have a little star next to that, only because there are a few owl species in Nevada that aren't necessarily exclusively nocturnal. There are a few that are diurnal. Diurnal means that they're awake during the daylight. A few that are even called crepuscular, which is alert, dawn, and dusk. And when we get to those species, we'll chat more about those. Owls are also called raptors or birds of prey. So raptors are birds that are carnivorous. They only eat meat from other animals. This is their food. This is their sole resource for any kind of nutrient, of course, other than water. They do have special physical characteristics that help them eat only meat, help them be carnivorous, and help them hunt. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. And then lastly, owls are wonderful at camouflaging themselves. Since most owls are nocturnal and all owls are carnivorous, being able to blend in or camouflage within their environments helps them be hidden from people. So it's difficult for us to see them when we're birding. And it also helps them blend in when hunting and sleep during the day. All right, so here is our barn owl. Barn owls are one of my favorites, just because they're so unique looking in their plumage coloration. We're going to focus on this guy just for a little bit here. We are going to go through each of these features one by one very quickly so we can get to the fun part at the end, which is all of those species showcases. So as far as special features go, owls do have, or most of them do anyway, they have a facial disc that you can see that surrounds their face there. They have very specialized feathers and wings, and that is their plumage coloration or their feather coloration and their feather shape. Their ears are very unique. I won't give away too much information here, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Their eyes are spherical and they're locked in their eye sockets. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but having their eyes locked in their eye sockets means that they can focus heavily. They have excellent binocular vision. This helps them in hunting. It also helps them with any blind spots that people have. You know, we have blind spots in our eyes, but owls don't have blind spots. They do have a sharp hooked beak. This helps them when catching, capturing, ripping flesh apart. It just helps them get into that meat that they eat. And then lastly, they have very sharp talons. This is yet another reason why owls are considered birds of prey or raptors. Helps them latch onto their prey, helps them hunt. Yes, all right, so let's get into it a little bit further. So first, feathers and wings. So owls have different types of feathers all over their body. Owl feathers are specially shaped so that they are silent when they fly. And I have a picture to show you in just a moment here. But in this little drawing, we see velvety down feathers that are found on the wings and on the legs and on the body that help absorb sound. So it helps them stay silent. It also helps keep them warm. And then we also see some stabilizing feathers. Stabilizing feathers will also stay on their tail, but mostly we'll see it on their wings on the leading edge, which is right here. That's the edge that hits the wind first when they fly. And it's also on their primary feathers. On that leading edge though, we have this comb-like structure. It's super cool. And here's a close-up of it. So that's on this leading edge, right, of the main feathers. That's what hits the wind first. And this comb-like structure is super stiff. It's sort of like a plasticky feel. It's not plastic, it's just stiffer pieces of feather material. But what this comb-like structure does is break up the wind as it hits the wing, so that owls don't really have a lot of turbulence when they fly, and they're also extremely silent when they fly, compared to maybe a hawk or a raven or even an eagle. And here are some examples of great horned owl feathers. So as I said, owls have a lot of different types of feathers that cover their whole body. Along that leading edge of the primary feather, that's that line here that just popped up. And that's where that comb-like structure is, but there's also some tail feathers, body feathers, a couple different types of body feathers, and they're all shaped a little differently. They offer some fluff, they offer warmth, and most of them offer some kind of camouflage to help them blend in. And this is a picture of some baby owls, also called owlets. And this is a really great example of the shape of the owl. So not only can you see their beaks and their eyes, you can also see their facial disc around their face here, and all of those really fluffy fluff feathers that help keep the owls warm. So those fluff feathers never really go away, even when they're adults. They might lose those feathers, but they will always have some kind of fluff as like a down coat underneath some of their primary feathers. All right, moving on to their eyes. So owls have very special eyes. They have spherical eyes, as we've mentioned before, and they are locked in their eye sockets. So the pictures that we've got up on the screen right here, both are skulls from a great horned owl. And you'll see these tube-like structures where the eyes sit, and this helps them stay locked in place. There's a couple different reasons why owls have locked in place eyes. First, they have avascular retinas, simply meaning that they have no blood vessels, and that prevents shadows and light scattering, and also blind spots. So if you look in the mirror when you're super tired, or maybe you've had a ton of coffee, either way, you might see blood vessels in your eyes when you look in the mirror. We have vascular retinas. We have blind spots. Sometimes we get floaters. We have blood vessels in our eyes. But owls have avascular retinas, so they don't have any kind of shadows. They don't have blood vessels in their eyes. They don't have any blind spots. The tube that their spherical eyes sit in are funnel or trumpet shaped, and this helps them stay locked. If an owl wants to look at something, they have to turn their entire head. They can't just look with their eyes like we can. It's a little bit different strategy, but it allows owls to have extremely keen binocular vision, and this helps them hunt. Sort of transitioning into eyes and ears. So ear tufts versus ear holes. So this picture is of a great horned owl. They're one of the most common owls that we've got. And at the top of the picture, you'll see that this owl has ear tufts. Those are those long feathers that sit right above the eyes. They sort of look like horns. Those are just feathers. The main purpose for these tuft feathers are to help the owl stay camouflaged, help them blend in. But owls do have ears, and they do have ear holes just like we do. So their ear placement is a little bit off. So our ears are symmetrical. They align with the center of our faces, kind of align with our nose. Owls, however, have asymmetrical ears or offset ears, meaning that one ear is higher than the other, and typically the right ear is higher than the left ear. Let me go to the next slide and I'll show you what I mean. So here's a drawing and a picture of a great horned owl skull, same skull that we were looking at before, but the only difference is those trumpet tubular structures are removed. We removed them so that you can see where the ears sit. So, sorry, this way, where the ears sit. So you'll see that the right ear is higher than the left ear. And that placement of asymmetrical ear holes helps them in hunting. And you can see in this picture that it's proof owls do have ears just as we do. They're actually shaped pretty similar. They're just covered in feathers. Feathers will help keep them protected. It also helps muffle really loud sounds and helps them focus on those very light, hard to hear noises. This is a drawing of why owls have asymmetrical ears. It helps them in hunting in a very specific way. So if an owl is sitting in pitch dark and there's a little mouse on the ground that's rustling in the feathers, with asymmetrical ears, one sitting above the other, the owl can pinpoint almost exactly where that sound is coming from because sound is reaching the ears at different times. All right, so very quickly, eye color. Owls have different colored eyes. There's really no reason for this. It just depends on species. It doesn't help or hurt the owls in any way, but in terms of identification, it will help you. For example, the picture on the left is a great horned owl and the picture on the right is a barn owl. You can also see that facial disc really stand out on this barn owl down here on the right. Barn owls in particular have heart-shaped facial discs, kind of very, in the shape of a heart. Facial discs are there to help guide sound into the ears. Humans sort of have a facial disc. You could argue that this area right here is a facial disc, but those feathers specifically, when sound hits the owl's face, sound will be funneled or guided into the ear area, which are over here. All right, so head movement. So I do have a question for all of you. I don't expect an answer to come in into the chat. It's just something to think about. So in terms of head movement, do you think that owls can move their head all the way around? There is a correct answer. I'll give you just a moment to think, but some possible answers are yes, they can move their head all the way around in a complete circle, or no, they can't move their head all the way around in a complete circle. They can move their head maybe halfway or a quarter of the way or 3/4 of a circle. So just take a moment to think about it. I'm going to take a big swig of water. All right. All right, so head movement. Before I give you the exact answer, this should serve as a little bit of a clue. Owls have twice as many cervical vertebrae as humans. Humans have 7 cervical vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae are the vertebrae in your neck. Owls have twice as many, so owls have 14 cervical vertebrae. The answer is owls can only move their head 3/4 of a circle, not all the way around. They are able to rotate their heads 3/4 of a circle. This rotation, all of this movement, helps them hunt, and it also helps them compensate for not being able to move their eyes in their head. So if they do need to listen for something specifically in one area or in one direction, or if they need to look at something in one direction, they can't move their eyes, so they need to turn their entire head. We can only move our heads in about 180 degrees, which is from, all the way this way to all the way this way. And I just wanted to share with you some really cool pictures of this. The upper left picture is of burrowing owls, and it shows that owls can not only move their head this way, 270 degrees or 3/4 of a circle, they can also move their head this way, almost 3/4 of a circle. In the picture on the right-hand side, that's a barn owl. What we are looking at is the back side of the owl, and the owl is turned and facing the camera. So his head is facing almost all the way around. And a couple little very short videos. This again is a burrowing owl flexing their cervical vertebrae, tipping their head. Here's an owl with great focusing skills. And these are owlets, or almost adult owls. And the owl on the left is super bored, but I wanted to direct your attention to the owl on the right-hand side. So what we're looking at with that owl is their back end, their backside. So they are able to turn their head all the way this way to all the way this way. I can't do it because I'm not an owl, but. All right, so quickly moving on to their talons. As I said earlier, owls are birds of prey, so they do have super sharp talons to help capture, grasp their prey, carry off their prey. Owls are remarkably strong as well, and most of them are pretty good at picking up and carrying off anything that is as big as they are, or smaller. So depending on the owl, depending on the species, they might focus a lot of their energy and diet on animals that are as big as they are, like mice, even jackrabbits, smaller voles, just depends on the species. But owls do have large, sharp talons for hunting. They also use talons for defense. They do have 4 toes on each foot. Now in the upper left-hand picture, you see 3 toes in the front. What you don't see is that 1 toe in the back. Owls have somewhat of a special toe, one of them, they can actually twist or rotate that end toe to adjust if it's in the front or in the back, depending on if they're perching, clutching prey, depending on what they're doing, they can rotate that end toe to become 3 in the front and 1 in the back, or 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And that is the difference between zygodactyl or anazodactyl. I know we're learning a bunch of words tonight. So when the owl is clutching its prey, its toes spread apart so that it can get a firm grip. And typically that will be 2 in the front and 2 in the back. However, when they're just sort of perching or hanging out, walking, it could be 3 in the front and 1 in the back. So we did just cover a lot of very cool owl-specific characteristics and features. We're now going to shift just a little bit and talk about owl identification basics, so that when we're done, hopefully we can all go outside and try and test our identification skills, see if we can ID some owls. So all owls belong to one of 2 families. The first one is Titonidae, which is barn and bay owls. The only owl that belongs in this family in Nevada is barn owls. And the other one is Strigidae, which is all other owls. Two-tuft or not two-tuft, that is just talking about tufted owls with those feathers on top of their head, or round-headed owls like a barn owl that do not have any of those tufts. And we will be covering some field markings, and I do have some great pictures to show some examples of what their plumage might look like, and some hunting techniques, how they capture and eat their prey, and vocalizing. Now, I'm not going to share vocalizing tonight, but I will be sharing some very cool resources where you can get to know some of those vocalizations. So first, we're going to cover what the owl looks like, of course, size and shape, plumage patterns, some behavior to look out for, like when to spot the owl during the day and the evening, and some of the vocalizations that you can listen for. Now, like, as I said, I won't be sharing what those vocalizations or what those calls sound like, but we'll be talking about what you can listen for. All right, so let's go into some species showcases, species identification. This owl, very, very easy. This is the great horned owl, very common, one of the most common and largest owls in Nevada. They are from the family Strigidae. They are a tufted owl. They're about 2 inches tall. Their wingspan can vary between 3 and 4.5-ish feet. They're about the size or between the sizes of a crow and a goose. So they're not quite as big as a goose, but they're definitely bigger than a crow. They're super thick, fluffy, and they definitely have bright yellow eyes, a dark beak. Most have a white patch that sits right about here. And, they have those tufts. They have that cinnamony brown facial disc that's outlined in black. But, since these are the most common owls, they also eat almost anything, including, jackrabbits, rabbits, even snakes, lizards, frogs, any and all of the above that is as big as they are or smaller, including feral cats and small dogs. So it's just something to think about. What I've got here, the picture on the left, is some camouflaging going on. And it's really neat to notice the coloration of the plumage up against the bark of the tree on the outer side of the owl, and then on the inner side of the wings right here, you'll see that golden brown checkerboard pattern happening. And these are some pictures of not only an adult owl, but also an owlet, how fluffy and cute they are. Also proof that owls can live just about anywhere. I have a picture of an owl in a saguaro cactus, and then I have a picture of an owl in the trunk of a tree. So it just sort of depends. All right, the next owl is the burrowing owl, also super common, especially in southern Nevada. They're from the family Strigidae. They do have rounded off heads, depending on how excited you might get one. Their facial expressions really make this owl stand out. They have white brows up against yellow eyes. So they might be excited, they might be angry at you for spotting them, but you will definitely be able to see how they feel depending on their eyebrows. So they're pretty small. They're not even a foot tall. Very rarely you'll get one that's 10 to 11 inches tall. Their wingspan is about 2 feet, but they also have those really long legs, those really long skinny legs. And they also have that checkerboard pattern going on the front, and then spotted on the backside. And then on the inside of their wings, they also have some checkerboard. I did want to show some of some owls eating. So there is a picture right here of a burrowing owl eating a frog. They do really love frogs. Typically when they hunt, they don't really fly. They'll sort of just like hop over and hunt as they hop or walk around. They will fly just to get from point A to point B, but they'll typically not hunt by flying. Typically they'll fly from point A to point B, and once they get to that new area, hop around and hunt at the same time. So these owls are diurnal, meaning they're awake during the day. And depending on what time of year it is, like breeding season, they're awake 24 hours a day. They'll sort of take shifts. Some owls will sleep during the day, some will sleep at nighttime. So there's always at least one owl awake within their small family colony to watch over their nest. Burrowing owls do nest just about anywhere. They do nest in the ground. They nest in rocks. They can dig holes themselves. They can also take over holes that other animals have built. Typically what you will find when you're birding for a burrowing owl is this little picture on the right-hand side, which is just the top dome of their head, their white eyebrows, and their bright yellow eyes. You typically won't see them hanging out outside of their nest, but they would nest not only in nature areas, but they could nest in construction areas, humanized areas, gutter systems, places like that. And then sometimes you may see the whole colony hanging out, but very, very rarely. And I also wanted to show off what the owlets look like, little fluffy yellow things with gray heads. All right, one of my favorites, this is the barn owl. They're the only owl that's from the family Titonidae, but that's just something that you can take to your next group meeting if you'd like. So they are round-headed, they do not have tufts. They're about a foot to a foot and a few inches in height. Their wingspan is pretty standard, 3.5 feet. Their facial disc really stands out with their black eyes, and that I already mentioned it earlier, but they have that heart-shaped face, and the underside of their plumage can be tan, yellowish, cream to white, and then the back end gray, sandy, but it really does help them blend in. Down here, I wanted to show off some variation within their coloring. So it is possible that you may see a more of a tan or dark brown barn owl. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the owl, and it doesn't mean it's a male or a female. It just sort of depends. It's sort of a variation in their plumage. But that's it. That's all that means. Oh, I also wanted to mention that these owls are nocturnal. So typically when you're birding for this owl, you may see just a big flash of white. That was the first time I ever saw a barn owl. We were driving and it just flew across the road right in front of our car. So we just saw a big flash of white, and it was the underside of the wings that we were seeing. Nesting, they do nest in barns, hence the name barn owl. If you do own any sort of chunk of farmland, these are your best friends as far as keeping your rodent population to a bare minimum. So they love nesting in barns, old churches, abandoned buildings, things like that. They're excellent hunters and they don't really need a nest per se. They just sort of like scratch a little area in the dirt and call it good. They could pull in some vegetation and some old feathers, but they usually don't do that. So they can really nest anywhere. They eat just about anything that's as big as they are or smaller. They really love eating voles, mice, all of the animals that eat our crops. So they're a very beloved owl for farmers. This little owl is a Western screech owl. They do have tufts. They're very, very small though. And they do have a little bit of a facial disc. That's what that orange arrow is pointing at, but it's really kind of difficult to see. It's sort of outlined in gray. And these guys are also really small, not even a foot tall, 2-foot wingspan. Usually gray and white stripes in the front and gray, dark gray, light brown patches on the back. These owls in particular are excellent for blending in. They have fantastic camouflage. So you'll see those stripes going down. We call them spidery streaks because they'll sort of fan out like a spider's legs, but their tufts are sort of rounded off. So they're not just up like this. They're not just feathers that stick up. They're sort of like a crown like this. So that really does help them blend in with bark or different patterns on the bark. Western screech owls are nocturnal hunters that are extremely well in being camouflaged. Their base color is normally gray. I did mention that. But their feet are covered with feathers, like brownish feathers, and their eyes are bright yellow. I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay, just making sure, no worries. And then lastly, with the Western screech owl, they really do love to nest in cacti, especially here in the southern region, but they also will nest in already made holes in trees. They love eating mice, bats, shrews, even kangaroo rats, so like little animals. They'll also eat birds, fish, amphibians, grasshoppers, moths, worms, slugs, even scorpions. So they're pretty versatile. This owl to me always looks super excited. This owl is a long-eared owl. They do have those tufts. They are about 1.5-ish in height, 3-ish foot wingspan. They're really slender owls with big, bright yellow eyes and a cinnamony colored facial disc. As far as their differences between the great horned owl, their coloration is really key to look at and the overall shape. So in flight, you'll see more of the cinnamony look, and you'll also see, I don't have the ability to point, but in this middle picture here, you'll see some black stripes happening right around their wrist area. And then you'll also see really strong cinnamon with a white Y between their eyes. And long-eared owls in particular, if you are going to go birding for long-eared owls, it's super common to see a lot of them hanging out all together, sort of in a colony or a family colony, very similar to the burrowing owl. But long-eared owls leave the nest very early. And when they leave the nest, they are not ready to fly by any means, but they will sort of hop around the branches. Sometimes they'll fall from the branches, but they can climb back into the trees using their wings to prop themselves up, using their beak to pull themselves up. So when you are birding, you may see 12, 12 or more, even up to 100 birds at once of just long-eared owls hanging out. They've also been known to hang out with other birds, little birds. So that is very common to see as well. These small owlets that have left the nest are called branchers. So if you do see that in a guidebook or something like that, that's just something to be aware of. All right, this owl is a short-eared owl, very similar. They do have little tiny short tufts you can see in the second picture there. But as far as coloration goes, this owl reminds me of an owl that has a lot of makeup on. So that facial disc is really outlined in white. They have a lot of eyeliner on. They have a lot of lipstick on. That's that dark beak. So this owl may stand out simply because of their big facial disc. And they will also have that, that black stripe right along their wrist area. It's kind of in the shape of a comma. And here are a couple other pictures. So this owl is diurnal, awake during the day, but they're really often seen around dusk. So just as the sun is getting ready to set, perfect time to go out and find this owl. Typically, the babies or owlets will stay with the mother until they're completely ready to leave the nest. And these owls are very protective, and they can sometimes nest on the ground or really low in vegetation, short vegetation, bushes, things like that. The way that they fly is really unique though. They're really buoyant in the air, so they'll kind of like bounce. Whenever they flap their wings, their whole body will move with their wings, so their whole body will sort of bounce whenever they flap. All right, I believe this is the last owl we'll be looking at tonight. Could be wrong, we'll see. This is the northern saw-whet owl. This is one of the more popular owls simply because of some of their facial features and their behavior. So this is a round-headed owl, pretty small, only 7 to 8 inches in height, little tiny thing. Their wingspan though is about 1.5 feet, a little bit shorter than 1.5 feet. They're about robin sized. They're very small. They are nocturnal. They're hard to see even during daylight hours. They roost in super dense vegetation and typically just above eye level, maybe 5 to 6 feet off the ground and near the trunk of the tree. So one of the main reasons why people are drawn to this owl is if we do see them in nature, their main defense mechanism is to hold absolutely as still as possible in an effort to keep camouflaged. But we are humans, are a little bit smarter. We can see them. Sometimes we get a little too close and they get more scared. But I think that's one of the reasons why humans love this owl so much. We'll see them in the tree, they'll hold completely still. It may seem like they're tame and okay with us getting closer, but they're not. It's just another friendly reminder to respect the animal's space, and hopefully they will respect ours. They do have bright yellow eyes, streaks along the chest, fully feathered feet, and spots and checkerboard pattern on the inside of their wings. They also have a white Y between their eyes. And here are some owlets that have left the nest. They're typically forest birds, but they can nest in dense trees or dense bushes that overlook some open understory or some open grassland. They can sometimes nest in boxes, but not very often. So especially in owlets, you'll see them hanging out just outside the nest if you're going to be birding for these owls. They will have that Y. They won't have any streaks or anything happening yet, but they'll have a solid brown head and a cinnamon chest. They eat mostly small animals just because they're so small. but they'll really focus on insects as well. So grasshoppers, moths, beetles, sometimes small birds, shrews, pocket mice, bats, even some chipmunks. So I did want to give all of you a little bit of a test. Hope you're not falling asleep on me. So we did cover 7 species. I will list them here on the left. We covered the great horned owl, the burrowing owl, barn owl, western screech owl, the long-eared owl, short-eared owl, and then lastly, the northern saw-whet owl. So you can use the chat box to let me know which owl it is, or you can keep it to yourself. Or you can even unmute yourself and let everybody know what you think. So which owl is this? I'll give everyone just a few moments to identify and then I'll give you the answer. Excellent. I see. Oh my goodness, everyone is getting it correct in the chat. Everyone, yes, that is the long-eared owl. You can see the super long tufts, narrow body, cinnamony facial disc here with the Y in the middle. And which owl is this?
I trained them well. I'm kidding.
That is a saw-whet owl. Excellent job. You can see big, bright yellow eyes, sitting low in the tree, not moving, that white Y here. I didn't mention it before, but typically a saw-whet owl will have a big head compared to a small body. All right, next. Yes, Joy, excellent job. This is a western screech owl. Now, this is actually one of the pictures that I showed you before. It is a screecher. Yes, Kevin, thank you. You'll see the spidery streaks along its belly, the rounded off tufts. Excellent job. All right, next. It's not a barn owl. I see that coming up in the chat. It is definitely not a barn owl. It is a short-eared owl. Good job, Joy. So a short-eared owl will have the white on the underneath of the wings, but the rest of the body is brown, tan, spotted, streaked. This is the owl that has a lot of makeup on. So it'll have the outline of the facial disc in white and a lot of eyeliner. And then it'll have the comma stripe along the wrist. So this is a short-eared owl. Yes, this is our barn owl. Yeah, I immediately saw in the chat that everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the barn owl. Almost white all over on the underside, white facial disc, really light brown tan checkerboard on the back side of the wings. Yes, excellent job. All right, next. Yep, this is our great horn, most common owl out there. I hope, if anything, everyone knows how to identify a great horned owl. And lastly, yeah, key features for a burrowing owl. Excellent job, everyone. Are the owls on the ground. One, they look so super excited because they were spotted, but they do have that really telltale facial expression going on with white eyebrows, really long skinny legs, and they're also sort of in a family colony. All right, so excellent job, everybody. I wanted to share with you some resources very quickly. One of my favorites is eBird Online. There's actually an app on top of that helps with calls, vocalizations. If you're not sure about which bird you're seeing, it will help you based on size, coloration, what time of year you saw it. There's also the Audubon, the Merlin Bird ID app and online, the Raptor ID app. Allaboutbirds.org is something that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology manages through their main site. super helpful. But really just have any field guide with you, have your phone with you, and just get outside and practice stuff. My favorite is the eBird online and the Western Birds Peterson's field guide, but that's just me personally. You may have other favorites. So lastly, I do have the chat open. Does anyone have any questions about anything at all? Oh, Joy, that's a really great question. Other than us, do owls have any natural predators other than raptors? The answer is yes, but there is a little bit of a caveat to that. So owls are at the top of the food chain because they're such excellent hunters. But for the owls that nest low, like in low vegetation or on the ground, they are always going to be or the possibility to become prey for coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions. It just sort of depends. I can talk about owl pellets. I purposely left owl pellets out of this talk because it's a whole nother hour-long talk. Owl pellets are, so owl pellets are regurgitated fur and bone material that owls cannot digest. So let's say, for example, an owl will eat a vole or a mouse, like a barn owl, for example. They will typically eat the animal head first. It will go down into their first stomach. Owls have two stomachs. They have a ventriculus and a gizzard, sorry. And the stuff that they can digest will get digested. The stuff that they can't digest will stay in that area and will be compressed into a little pellet. And it's typically just the bones and the fur. And then the owl will regurgitate all of that out of this end onto the ground. Owls do relieve themselves through the other end as well because they do drink and they do eat things. If you do dissect an owl pellet, I would suggest that you do it very carefully or with gloves on. We do dissect owl pellets with students, but the pellets that we use are sanitized, wrapped in foil, and steamed at super high temperatures to kill any potential bacteria. So if you do see an owl pellet on the ground, you can poke at it and move it around with a stick maybe just to see what the owl is eating. You may be lucky and find a skull in there. It's really exciting when you find a skull, but I wouldn't touch it. Kevin, I hope I answered everything about owl pellets that you were hoping to have answered. However, owl pellets are a whole nother talk. I would be absolutely happy to do some owl pellet dissections with everybody. It's one of my favorite things to do. Other than the burrowing and great horned, are there any other common Southern Nevada owls? Yes, so the burrowing owl, the great horned owl, and the barn owl in particular are the three most common. I would say other than that, Western screech owls are pretty common, but they're very hard to see, very hard to find. So those three, great horned owl, burrowing owl, and a barn owl. I see them the most often, in that order, by the way, too.
Jim had a question there, Jess. Where should we look for short-eared owls?
Oh, sure thing. I have that in here, but I didn't want to keep you all night. Short-eared. I do know off the top of my head, but I don't want to leave out anything. Okay, so what I did leave out, and I'm very sorry that I did this. So short-eared owls do hunt on the wing as opposed to like burrowing owls who hop around on the ground. So if you are going to go birding for short-eared owls, typically you'll find them flying or gliding really low over low fields, low vegetation, bushes, open fields along edges where the trees or cliff sides really go up. So they'll be hunting or gliding, and then you might see them like swoop down really quick, pop up and they'll have something in their grasp. And remember, these are the owls that are sort of buoyant when they fly, they sort of bounce. But other than that, they do perch really low in trees, even on ground level or super near ground level. Even during breeding season, they're active all day and all night by taking shifts, but they do prefer those low light times. So if you are going to go birding, I would suggest looking for low vegetation open fields next to some kind of cliff face or some thick trees, like high trees. And I would go in the early evening to late evening. I hope that helps. Oh, I've also seen short-eared owls by like a wetlands area, but not by the water. Like whenever I've seen them where there's water nearby as well. I hope that helps.
And another question, some pictures of the tufted owls did not show the tuft. Can owls raise and lower the tufts?
They can actually. I did show some of these pictures on purpose. Like for this owl example of short-eared owl, in the picture on the left, you won't see those tufts, but in the picture on the right, the wind, I think, is actually causing those tufts to sort of perch up a little bit. But most owls can raise and lower their tufts depending on their alert level. So if they're sort of just relaxing, sort of like humans, their facial expression will be a little bit relaxed. Their facial muscles will be relaxed as well. But as soon as they're alert, just like a human, you know, we might raise our eyebrows or stand up straight a little bit. Owls, same thing. They might pick up those facial features. They may put up those tufts. So the main purpose of those tufts is to help them stay blended in and to break up the silhouette. So yes, they can pick up those tufts. Also, when they fly, I don't know if I can, oh, there we go. When they fly, even tufted owls, you may not see those tufts because the wind is slicking them back. So in flight, owls are hard to identify.
One more question, do owls migrate?
Yes, Brenda, thank you. I was trying to scroll and I just got to that. The answer is yes. Most owls do migrate, but depending on the species, depending on the individual owl, they may choose not to migrate. All owls are protected under the Migratory Bird Protection Act. So it's illegal to hunt them. It's illegal to shoot them. It's illegal to capture them. You have to have a special permit to work on them or study them. I have those permits because I work for the Nevada Department of Wildlife. So I can help in those studies, but they are protected because they do migrate. It's super possible that you may have a pair of owls that found a cool nest in a really beautiful part of a really temperate region or climate, and their migration, that pair, could be just a couple miles, maybe just to another tree or maybe a little bit higher in elevation or nearer to water. Other species, other individuals from that particular species may migrate an entire state, may migrate hundreds of miles. It just depends on the weather, the year, that individual, food resources, water resources, nesting resources. So sort of a gray answer, long-winded, very gray answer.
Were there any other questions from anyone? Seeing none. Jess, I would like to thank you on behalf of the Friends of Gold Butte and all the attendees tonight for a great presentation. That was really interesting. I learned a ton of stuff about owls, and I've always been fascinated by them, but this was very informative. I always thought they were cool, and I sort of worry that they might carry off my small dachshund, but now I don't think they will. I think that he's too heavy. So
yeah,
hopefully they won't try.
And yeah, especially because I have small-ish dogs too, and my mom and dad have really small dogs. So whenever we go camping and stuff, the owls see us and they don't want to bother with us. So they usually leave our pets alone. But it's just something to think about if you take your pet to the baseball field and let them run amok. It's just a little bit of a caution reminder for us to just keep a lookout in the skies as well. But
I have had a great horned owl in my backyard in an old dead eucalyptus tree that was there. And I worried a little bit about the little dogs because he was big.
yeah, and they're surprisingly strong too. I'm always super impressed by their strength.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And if any of you are making it out to the trash cleanup tomorrow, it's a great way to celebrate Earth Day and do something nice for the area. And other than that, I hope you all have a great evening and stay safe, stay well. And Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you. I
Really
had a
appreciate it.
blast.
Can't
Yeah,
wait for the bat walkabout. It'll be great.
I know, me too. I'm so excited. But thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.